Welcome to Directionally Correct, a people's podcast with Cole and Scott. Today's guest, Nelson Spencer, founder and CEO of Efora.
Go.
Hey, Directionally Correct fans. If you're looking to stay connected to the podcast, make sure to subscribe to our Substack newsletter, watch our videos on YouTube, or listen to the podcast on your app of choice. This podcast is dedicated to you to help educate and entertain you on how to effectively do people analytics. We are a listener-supported podcast, so please consider becoming a patron. If you'd like to support the podcast by becoming a patron, you can find a link to sign up in the show notes or at patron.podbean.com/directionallycorrect. Thanks for being a listener. All opinions are our own and do not reflect those of any other organization. More like, can I have a home-cooked meal, you know?
And hopefully you get like a decent hotel room. Man, I was just in DC last week and it was a really, really swank hotel. But like it was old as shit from like the 1800s, and it kind of showed, you know?
Yeah.
Like tiny room, at least a decent shower. What's up, Nelson?
Hey guys, how we doing?
Have you ever stayed in a hotel like that, Nelson?
Yes, I'm a big
I got
hotel
a question about that. Yeah, like Scott, at a certain point of oldness, does luxury actually turn into dilapidation? You know, like is it?
That's
Yeah.
where I'm going. That's where I'm going. Like I'll give you an example. Or always wanted to stay at the Driscoll Hotel in Austin, Texas. It's right on 6th Street. It's from like the early 1800s. It looks posh as hell. You walk in, it's posh as hell. I finally got the chance to stay there probably about 2 weeks ago. And, you know, it's very nice. It's very clean, all this sort of stuff, but it's, you know, it's a little older. It's just
I'm going to translate for you. If your first thing you say is it's clean, that is not a high bar.
Yeah, that doesn't sound too great.
You know, it's like walking into like an old Victorian home. You're like, okay, yeah. Where's the square footage? I don't understand. Did people hate square footage back in the day?
That's true.
Well, Nelson, right before you joined, we were talking about spending an inordinate amount of time in Atlanta for conferences. Are you in Atlanta or are you in New York now?
I'm in Atlanta. I'm going to be in New York in a little bit, but I'm still in Atlanta. Hotlanta. We actually don't say that anymore, but yeah. But good.
It's been a while. It's been a
bit.
Well, I thought, is it not hot there anymore?
No, I think it's just not cool to say that anymore. But you know, it does get hot here for sure.
I felt like it was never cool to say that, right? I mean, or was it?
I think there was a small time. I think that time has moved on, but.
It's kind of like when your parents
do
when your parents start saying like bling bling, you're like, okay, that's
exactly
okay.
Yeah. That's very very similar. Yeah, that's how it feels right now.
Or are we to that point, Nelson, with AI, where it's like everybody's talking about it so much it's not cool anymore?
That's a good question. I don't think so, but I think we do need to get into, you know, how can we get it to be useful versus just kind of like a hot topic that we're all talking about. So I think that we need to like move forward with the conversation if that's what you're leaning towards. I think so, yes.
Well, how do we make it useful?
I think a number of things. So I think we need to figure out like a strategy. So I think that's what a lot of people are struggling with right now. So I think it's more so, you know, everyone generally knows it exists, right? When I'm thinking about from like a people, team, HR perspective, I think it's now trying to figure out like, okay, so like how do I use it and how do I get value? How do I figure it all out? So that's really the next big thing that everyone's trying to figure out. So that's really where people need to spend some time on.
How do you see that AI is going to like erode or enhance skills of our workforce?
So I think from a skills perspective, so I was thinking about this the other day. So I think if you think about like the career ladder, like the traditional career ladder in like how the different skills are aligned there, I think AI is going to really change and cut off part of the ladder. So I think like the junior pieces are going to be a little bit different, right? I think the senior pieces are going to be a bit different. So then it's going to be like a little bit of a squeeze. So what does that end up looking like? I think it's like very, very different. I think, you know, with anything, the roles are going to change, the technology is going to change. I think for skills in particular, I think we will all obviously need to be very kind of AI literate and figure out how, like, what does that actually look like? I think new roles will be coming up and existing that don't exist right now, similar to any other, big advancement. So I think a lot of it is just like a mindset shift on how to like work with AI is really important.
I think what you talked about, like the skills compression, that's what I'm really fascinated by right now. Like where right now you will pay somebody a lot of money for specific tech skills. We'll say those sort of things. If you're straight out of college, I mean, like Gen AI is a great leveler of the field, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where like, would you pay someone so much money that they're probably going to come up with better ideas because they have more experience and more contacts, that sort of stuff. I think that's the innovation aspect. I think that's where you would still pay people the high dollars.
Yeah.
But
So I think there's still some really valuable skills that everyone's going to need to have. So it's really going to be, but I think it's going to lean a lot more towards the kind of human centered approach to it on like, how do you kind of think about AI? Because the AI will be able to do a lot of the execution that we are doing now. So I think it's really a skill transformation to like orchestration of like, what does that look like?
You introduced this concept to me. So we talked about skills compression earlier. What about skill stacking? What is that?
Yeah, so skill stacking is one of my favorite like mental models, big mental model framework guy. So when I think about skill stacking, I think about it from a standpoint of, so my background is in sports. So when you think of an elite athlete, they're in the 1% probably of, a very specific skill set, right? Most of us are not, unfortunately, going to be in the 1% of one specific skill. However, if you think about a group of skills, so, if you combine your experience from this and this and this, and then like a number of different areas, the combination of that is like your superpower. So like you can be, in the 1% of a little bit of, tech skills, leadership, communication, UX, whatever it may be. That's your superpower. So skill stacking is just kind of trying to figure out like, what are your unique skills and like building on that. So it's just kind of combining them, and that's like your 1%.
how'd you get involved with the Cleveland Guardians and the MLS team? Like this is like a dream. Like you are Moneyball.
I am Moneyball. So let's go back. So coming out of high school was when I really wanted to be a major league general manager for a major league baseball team. So
Yeah.
I grew up liking sports. I actually like, people ask me a lot if I like played baseball because I like worked in baseball and wanted to be at like very high levels in baseball. I did not play baseball. I peaked in t-ball, unfortunately, but I did play soccer and tennis growing up. Yeah, I always just wanted to figure it out. I played a lot of sports video games growing up. So if you remember like being able to do like the franchise mode and being able to basically like, I always like simulated the season so I could get to the off season to do all of the rules and trades and free agency. So once I realized that that's like an actual thing, I just tried to dive into it. So that's how that happened.
Do all the employees in the office wear a uniform too, like the coach?
That's really funny. So no, but they do all dress very similarly. So it feels like a uniform in a number of ways. If you kind of think about, I don't know, the cliche of like investment bankers and things like that, like in New York with like their Patagonias. I think everyone has like a look when they're in the front office. But so yes and no.
It's a cultural thing, right? Like you got to
It is very
fit
much
into your
a cultural thing.
organization.
Yes, it's a very cultural thing. They all have very different cultures. Yeah, it's an interesting kind of dynamic there as well.
You could so pull off the look of a GM too. Like I think you would crush it.
Thank you, Cole. I appreciate that.
And I can validate. Nelson mentioned earlier he loves a good framework. I don't think Nelson's ever met a framework he didn't love.
I love
it.
I think it's just helpful. I need structure in my brain, so they help me structurally.
Well, so post Moneyball era of your career, you were leading people analytics. I believe at Sonos, Figma. I may be missing somewhere as well.
Yep.
But you're now at Efora,
Yep.
which is doing some work with AI agent. Well, first of all, can you explain kind of like what AI agents are? And
Sure.
then how your experience with people analytics is informing how you're kind of producing that? Because like I feel like you're on the bleeding edge, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the podcast. Is everybody's like yapping about AI agents. Nobody's actually building them. You're actually building them.
Yep.
And so I think it would be really great for you to kind of talk about that journey and how what you're doing is pretty cool.
Sure. So I'll start from just kind of like the people analytics and kind of to current state. So I kind of fell into people analytics. So I was, like we're talking about, I was in baseball at the time. This was 2020. The whole world was changing every single day. There's a lot going on. So I basically, right before 2020, I had done an internal shift from doing on-field performance and analytics for the players to kind of a shift internally to understand kind of like how can we use the same data and analytics to understand our coaches who are, helping to, coach our players and things like that, obviously. So it kind of opened the world to more of L&D, people analytics, kind of just broader people stuff. So did that. And then once 2020 happened, I kind of saw that people analytics was kind of like blowing up because everyone's trying to figure out, the future of work and analytics and things like that. So I jumped from sports to Wayfair. So that was the first kind of shift into the people analytics space, and then did that for, a number of years at, the companies you mentioned. So then I think I saw that there was a big opportunity, obviously, when like ChatGPT, OpenAI, everything was kind of blowing up. I actually remember, clearly the weekend when ChatGPT like blew up on Twitter. I remember the next day I was at Sonos at the time. I went into like our people Slack team and I said like, I think this is going to like change everything. Crickets. Like no one, I don't think anyone read the article I posted. I don't think anyone like understood what I was talking about. I feel like I was like an alien speaking, a foreign language. So it was a really fascinating time. But anyway, so I've always kind of like been really closely following it for the last few years, and really before that because my master's is in data science. So I've always kind of been a little bit more in the technical space, I think, than the average person. So anyway, back to kind of like Efora and kind of like building AI agents. So I think a lot of people are thinking about, what is an AI agent? So really, it's really not as complex as people make it out to be, but I think there's a few like core components of an AI agent, right? So it has to have some type of like perception. So like data, like inputs are coming in. So it has to understand kind of like what does that mean? It has to have some type of knowledge, aka some either like a knowledge base or some type of prompt to know like its role in like what it is doing. It also has to understand memory. So when you are interacting with, ChatGPT, every time that you talk to it and you get a response, you keep talking to it, it doesn't start over again, right? Like it remembers like what you've been talking about. So it has to have some memory to it. And then it also has to have, some like actions. So like a tool or something like that. So it has to be able to like do something. And then really the last one is really trying to basically have some type of like kind of like guardrails or just like instructions on kind of like what to do and how to think from a kind of similar to like the perception side. So it basically has to be like a little mini analyst. So anything comes in, it can like autonomously make a decision and reason to figure something else out. Unlike an automated workflow, which is a different thing that we can talk about, but I think people confuse the two a lot.
Like everyone's sort of like Gen AI crazy right now, and like I totally remember that weekend that you're talking about, like before ChatGPT 3.0 was released.
Yep.
You had these sort of like college paper writer things, and like they're always kind of crap and like this sort of thing. But that came out, and it's like, oh man, this is a different animal altogether.
Yeah.
I mean, and obviously we've progressed. That's probably been like 2.5 years at this point. And like we've come so far. For the AI agents in people analytics, where's the biggest field that we can play in? What's the biggest targets that folks can hit with this?
So when I think about AI agents in people analytics specifically, I would probably think about like right now, a lot of it is still like we day-to-day is focused a lot on like dashboards and like reporting and things like that. I really think the low-hanging fruit is the doing the actual like analysis. So that's probably like the low-hanging fruit from like an agent perspective, right? So like you can give it a data set, ask questions. Again, you don't have to like do the coding in like R and Python as much as you had to before. So I think a lot of it is like low hanging fruit from like being able to interact with the data. Like that is like the basis that most people should be using it right now. And then it's iterating from there on like problem solving, strategic thinking, how do we get to the next step? But really a lot of it's just like basic text in data kind of analysis.
Get rid of the boring
stuff. Is
stuff.
this what you're doing to like future proof yourself in your like career? And is this what everybody should be doing, or like how do you think about answering that question?
Yeah, so I think like yes for myself. I think like selfishly I was like always interested in the AI and kind of tech space, but I think everyone should be figuring out like what does AI look like for them and kind of like their kind of boundaries related to AI, because I don't think you can outrun it. I don't think you can like ignore it also, but I think you need to figure out like what does it look like for you. So sometimes that is like what does it like obviously look like for my just my day to day. That's a big area. It could also be like how does it affect like how I do my work, obviously. So I think it's like a very individualistic type of experience for people, but I don't think you need to just like ignore it at all. Like I think you need to figure it out. I don't think you need to be like scared with it. I think you need to like embrace AI, dance with it, try and figure it out.
Well, what if I don't want to?
Well, then I think you're going to get left behind in some way. I hate when people say that because I don't like, fear mongering, but I think like to some degree, it's just like anything else. Like if we said, you have to figure out the internet or you have to figure out, this thing called electricity, then, some people didn't want to do that. And I don't know where those people are these days, but I'm sure their life might be hard.
It's amazing how many people have not picked up on AI, though. Like, I mean, like, there's still a percentage of the population that doesn't have access to the internet.
Right.
I mean, like,
yeah. So for sure. Yeah. Obviously, this is very kind of like, context dependent on kind of where folks are in the world. But yes, it is still, not accessible to literally everyone. I think at a high level, it's just making it more accessible. And I think people just need to figure out like, what does it look like for them though, for sure.
I was promised that you were going to be taking this call on a treadmill. That's what I was promised.
So that was
I'm
that was a false promise. I haven't actually walked on my treadmill probably in 2 years now. But
oh no, the COVID
I think it would have
dream
been
is
really
dying.
hard to do a podcast on a treadmill. Personally, I probably would have not done too well. But I mean, I love it. I think it's really helpful. Like it's you got to get your steps in, and you're in a lot of probably like boring meetings, so you can get 10, 15,000 steps in pretty easily.
There's a few folks that I see on meetings that are like on their treadmill. I'm always a bit jealous.
Do you think it's distracting?
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
Like two.
Someone like Bob in there. It's only distracting because it's like abnormal or unique, right? It's rarefied ground.
I was kind of
like I'll tell you why it's weird. I'll tell you exactly why it's weird. It's because if you're ever talking to somebody while you're walking, generally speaking, they're to your side, but you never talk to somebody who's walking directly in front of you. It's a very weird motion, and it is not natural to see somebody bobbing up and down.
Okay. I've never thought about it that way, but that makes a lot of sense. That's fair. I was always surprised at like how many people during meetings like called it out. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, but people seemed like it's like, are you walking on a treadmill? It's like, yes. Are you sitting down? Yes. Okay. So, no.
My folks went as far to buy a treadmill for this purpose, and it quickly like got became a clothes hanger. Like clothes started appearing on the handles, and
no, you gotta get one of the flat ones that like just sits directly under your desk, so that you actually are not really like holding on to anything. So maybe that sounds a little bit dangerous, but you gotta put it in the right spot.
It's not as distracting as when someone has like a background of like a beach or something like that. They do a little blue screen beach. That's really blurry
and like you
yeah. I love the little edges around people too. Like you can see the back.
I typically have I've done other Zooms. I typically have a picture of like a landscape because I do photography of like Portugal. A lot of people ask about it. So anyway, I turned it off for us. So it's not too.
Nelson, he's got all the good conversations.
I
also hear you're quite funny, Nelson. Is that true?
It depends on who you ask. I think I think it's very. Again, it's all very, very context kind of driven kind of stuff. I don't know. I think I'm decently funny, but it's a different type of funny. It's a very kind of, dry humor, wit type of funny. But yeah, I mean, it kind of comes back to high school. That's where we're going to. I got third funniest in my high school superlative. So that's probably my highlights of my whole life.
Third funniest is better than first funny. As third
Right?
funniest is funnier than first funniest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, he
like
made
that
the
in
list.
itself is like a bit. It's
Yeah,
like, what's
absolutely.
third funniest?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's like I was in the running, but I didn't quite get there. But not everyone else made it.
Was it like a class of 3?
No. Luckily, luckily,
Okay,
luckily
good.
there was more than just the 3 of us. But yeah, it's good.
It was homeschool.
Yeah. Yeah. That's hilarious. Yeah. No, I don't even have like siblings. So yeah, it was more than 3. Luckily.
Have you ever thought about getting up on stage, like doing a little comedy, try a little open mic?
So that's a good question. Kind of, but not like seriously. I did take an improv class once when I lived in New York City. I actually really enjoyed it, and I think I did pretty well. So maybe, but it's not high on my list. But maybe in the future we'll see.
I would love to take an improv class. I think that it would help so much in the business world, or just being able to interact with people and learn to listen and go with the flow. And like, I've never done it. They always fill up so quickly here. Like, I've tried it several times, but I think there are like improv nerds that, they fill up all the classes immediately. And they're on the inner circle.
I'm sure.
The Michael Scotts of improv.
I guess so.
The Who's of improv?
Well, wasn't he like his big thing in The Office was he was always going to improv classes and like taking over the class? I don't know. Maybe
I don't know.
I haven't watched a lot of The Office. I actually haven't. Like, that's a fun fact. I haven't watched a lot of like the Office, like Friends, like those shows that people like admire a lot. So
I'll say a controversial opinion. You're not missing a lot.
Okay.
Fair enough. Keep on living your life, dude.
Fair enough.
So my confusion matrix question of which Office character not going to go over well.
Yeah, I don't know. You might be able to tell me more than I do. I know, but I do like, I'm a big like millennial, so I like GIFs. So I do use a lot of GIFs from The Office, but I also don't know the context. So I don't know. I
going with a very millennial GIF statement there.
Yeah. Big
not
millennial.
saying GIF. We don't say that.
Not GIF, man. The creator called it GIF, but I think he's wrong.
Okay.
I think he's wrong.
Okay. And I think the GIF peanut butter guy is wrong too.
Yeah, I've always said GIF. I think that I don't know if that's still controversial or not, but maybe it is.
Well, do you want to do some confusion matrix, Nelson?
Sure.
The confusion matrix.
Well, we'll introduce some more randomness here. And as always, if Cole appreciates your answers, he will provide you with a social media tile that you can share with the first funniest friend from your high school.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll see.
How about
older
that?
Sister from homeschool.
Yeah.
Everyone can play this one. We're going to do 5 questions loosely based on the Big 5 model. All right. We'll start with, you can guess, should you want to guess the major factor. Okay, do you have an organized workspace or my fucking system?
Do I have an organized workspace or my fucking system? So I think it's probably a mix of both. I do like to have a like an actual like desk that has like all my stuff, but I also am like a little bit chaotic. So sometimes I'm moving and jumping around. So I think that's kind of my system. So a little bit of mix of both.
What about you, Cole? I've seen Cole's office.
Yeah. I mean, there is a system. I don't know if it's like super organized. My thing is like, I just don't move stuff. Okay. Like I don't actually use anything that's in my office other than my computer. Everything else is ornamental.
It's just like object permanence, right? It's just like, I know where it is.
Well, it's like I put it there and I'm never going to use it again. So I guess it's going to be there forever.
It looks good. Like it looks like I feel like the look of, executives is like, you always have to have some books behind you. You have to like be able to just like, have you, talked about this before?
Well, I'll give you an example. Like the other day I was like calling my wife's name. And I was like, hey, can you find me some tape? And she walked into the office and she's like, there's literally tape like a foot from you. And it's been there for years. And I was like, oh yeah, it's been there. So I forgot I had it.
Yeah.
Never use it.
Maybe you need to reacquaint yourself with your office and your stuff.
There's a bit of a personality measure here too. Like if Cole were to like arrange his books like by color, like it'd be
I did.
magical.
That's how
You did that.
I did
Okay.
that. Yeah. That's how the type of person I am.
Well, what do you do, Scott? Do you do?
I have like the most Spartan existence ever. Like I don't use a monitor. Like I have a stack of sticky notes, and like I'll write a sticky note and stick it on the desk, and that's kind of what I do.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
I remember at one point Scott tried to say, this is a long time ago. You're like, yeah, people who use monitors, like they're less productive. And I'm like looking around, I got like 4 monitors. I'm like, shit.
Yeah. I'm a big monitor guy. I don't like that.
it's a controversial opinion for sure. Like
Is it?
I think so.
I guess.
Like
I don't know.
people definitely hate it when I bring it up. But
I think
One of the fun things about having a podcast, because I'm as guilty of it as Scott, is just putting your own opinions out there as if they're facts, right?
Right.
It's like, that's definitely not a fact.
Yeah.
All right. Are you the office menace or an office saint?
I would say probably, I don't know, I try to be helpful. So I guess more of like the saint, but I certainly don't like calling myself a saint. I think just trying to be helpful.
Very saint-like of you.
Sure. But I also think there's a time and a place for the menace, in the sense of like being able to, speak up when, you see something that is, I don't know, not equitable or whatever. So I think there's something to, not that those people are menaces, to be clear, but I think there's something to like being able to speak up as well when there's things going on. So I don't know. Mix
You
both,
gotta have a voice.
Yeah, I think having a voice is good.
Voice doesn't make you a menace. Just
No,
makes you
definitely not. No.
having a voice.
All right. So work from home, pants on or pants off?
I'm very much a like professional at the top, like party at the bottom. So very like soft pants, very sweatpants for sure. I think that's like really, really the way to go.
After working from home kind of on and off for like the last few years, I really love a good lunch. Like a lunch, like out eating with somebody.
That's true.
But because of that, and I'm always rushing to get places because there's like no time between meetings and stuff like that. So I have to be dressed professionally if I'm going to go to a lunch. And so I really get to do the party on bottom, professional on top kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah, that's fair. But I wish you could. It's a good experience for you to feel sometimes.
Yeah.
I like that strategic nature that you got there. Like if you're working from home, like try to eat lunch with somebody else. At least make some human contact.
Yeah, it's huge. It's a lifesaver.
Yeah.
After a while, you start feeling like you're in solitary confinement. At least that's how I feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it Oprah that says like never eat lunch alone or never eat a meal alone or something like that?
I think there's a book called
There's a book on it.
I love books, by the way. This is a tangent. I love books where you don't have to read the book. All the wisdom is in the title.
Yeah. Those are good. Yep.
Like
just blank pages.
Never eat lunch alone. What got you here won't get you there. Love it. It's like, don't need to read the book. Totally get it.
Yeah. From good to great.
From good to great.
What is it? Leaders eat last or something like that?
Yeah.
Another one?
I love a book where all you need is the title.
Yep.
Make your bed. Do you let people merge in traffic or you just pretend like you don't see them?
Oh, that's a good question. I definitely let people merge because I have a really strong, I really hate when people don't use their blinkers, and it happens like significantly more than I think it should. So I generally let people get over because also people are crazy. So I also try not to do anything too crazy.
Is Atlanta a crazy place?
For driving in general? Yeah. I mean, it's the traffic is notoriously terrible almost all the time, and a lot of people don't like to use their blinkers. So that's a bad combo. But yeah, it works.
I was pleasantly surprised by like the metro system in Atlanta. Like it's surprisingly really good.
It has a very kind of interesting kind of like past in people's like view on it. But yeah, I mean it's helpful. It should and could be a lot better, but yes, it's generally helpful. Well, I guess you can say that.
I had the weirdest experience there because when I go to cities, usually I try to, if they have public transportation from the airport, I try to take it just to kind of get a feel like the city. Yep. And I did it like probably 10 or 12 years ago in Atlanta. Yeah. I was like, oh, this is great. So then I went back, I think this was like 3 years ago. So it's kind of coming off the heels of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And the MARTA system got into downtown. And then a bunch of police came onto the train with AR-15s
Wow.
I was like, oh shit, I should not be on MARTA right now.
Yeah.
And then I asked the people I was going to visit, I was like, it's like, should I be on MARTA? And they're like, whoa, what were you doing? I was like, okay, not riding
Yeah.
No
MARTA
ticket.
anymore.
Yeah.
No ticket.
Right. So that's like you get a very different reaction depending on who you ask about MARTA.
Yeah.
I think I don't think it's like it's certainly not like, New York or Chicago where just like everyone uses it regardless. But I think it's like, it's a very kind of like socioeconomic thing as well in Atlanta in particular.
It's like rolling up to like any sort of train station in Europe. Like you just got people standing outside with like Uzis and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
No, there you go.
Chill. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Mutually
yeah,
assured destruction there at the train station.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Surely that deters people from like doing some pretty wild freaking behavior, right? Like let's stop acting crazy.
Yeah.
All right, last one. Like when you're wrapping gifts, super exact or like just kind of a throw in a bag.
So historically was very much a throw it in the bag person, but also tried to like do better. So I like another thing that I do, I will deep dive on literally everything on YouTube. So I will literally try to learn how to like gift wrap better. So I've gotten better at it. It's not as hard as it you make it out to be, but it's also like very much dependent on the what you're gifting. So I think I would say still probably a mix of both right now, but leaning towards trying to get better at actually gift wrap it.
But you just like ball it up on the end and like kind of like mash it down.
Well, yeah, you gotta like fold it, and then you gotta like crease it, and then you just gotta like let it be.
Yeah,
put a ribbon on
I
it.
have such a negative connotation. So like when we were kids, my parents forced us to wrap everything and like forced you to like give. It was very transactional. It felt like. So like if I never had to give anybody a gift again, I would be totally fine. And it's not like I'm not generous because I love doing stuff for people. It's just the whole gift giving thing. I hate it. I don't know why.
Well, there's
like
a whole lot of
wrapping a
energy
gift
around it.
Yeah, is that what you mean, or just like?
Yeah, like the actual like wrapping of a gift, like
right,
and just like it's like I don't want to do it. Sorry,
you
can't make me.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Like here's your gift card.
Yeah,
do your thing. I distinctly remember when I was a kid, I received a Christmas gift from like a distant aunt who somehow she had wrapping paper that you couldn't rip. Not. It was like physically you could not rip it. Wow. And I was like, okay, what the hell is this? I've never come across it before since.
That's one of the things I've noticed. This is somewhat related, but not exactly. You can give like these toys to kids, and then they're like have this indestructible, exterior where the kid can't open the actual toy.
Little clamshell.
What is this material that you're using?
Like the plastic, like the it's like impossible to open. Yeah.
It's like how much like these kids they want to play with the toy so bad,
right?
But they're like, I'm sorry, I can't get into the gift.
Yeah, no, you gotta go find some scissors or like a knife or something. Yeah, to make it impossible. I hate that.
Do you like to wrap gifts, Scott?
Do I like? Nah. And look, kind of like Nelson. There was a time when I would take a little extra effort, and there was a time when like I just throw it in a box, or something like that, a bag rather. There for a while, they used to come out with it's called the Busted, and it's like the mug shots from all over Austin, and you get at the gas station or whatever. It's like a weekly sort of circular
like a gas station paper.
Yeah. But it was like nothing but mug shots, and they have like all the hottest dudes and all this girls and like all the craziest looking people with all the crazy hair. And I would wrap my mother's gifts in these every year.
That's hilarious.
For Christmas.
I've never heard of that. How did she take
that? She
never
laughed too much about it, but
okay.
I thought it was great.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Funny, but also kind of unrelated. I remember it used to be like just you had physical papers, right? And then they transitioned to like having online papers as well. Yeah. I remember my parents, from my hometown, they shared the login to like their reading the paper, and I always used to go look at the mug shots. And then I quit looking at it because I started seeing too many of my friends in the mug shots.
Wow.
And I was like, all right, maybe I'm not getting so interested in these mug shots anymore.
It's like the transition in life. Like when you're like in your 20s, it's all about seeing the people in the mugshots. When you get like older, it's like seeing all the people that you used to know that died. Right? You go to the obituaries.
Oh yeah, like obituaries.
Yeah, that's what
my stepdad talks about. He's like, oh yeah, I knew that guy.
You that guy.
Oh, it got morbid fast.
Sorry.
Sorry. That's so.
Well, let's do some nerdery. How about that?
Let's do it.
The nerdery. Let's start with delusions of employee development. How about that?
Yep.
So, previous guest on the podcast, Mark Efron. I've been on this Mark Efron kick ever since we had him on, because he publishes all this stuff and it's always super controversial. I'm like, all right, I got to talk about it. And what he's talking about is, there's this big gap between organizations who are spending billions of dollars on employee development and organizations who are having few tangible benefits to show from all of that investment into the development. And so what he goes through is he outlines exactly what organizations should do if they're wanting to get their employees to develop and see the benefit of that. First step, radically reduce your expectations, which such a funny step, right? But so second step is differentiate your development investment using a talent philosophy. So basically, invest in the people who are going to have the highest performance, I think is kind of what he's saying there. Number 3, let managers set development goals. Number 4, double down on experiences. Number 5 was create high potential development plans and talent reviews. 6 is make managers accountable for development. And I think that might be it. So did you guys get a chance to look through this? What are your reactions? Do you think employee development is just a delusion?
I think people are definitely deluded about it, right? They think that, on the high touch end, they're going to send them to like a class and like everyone's going to pay attention, A, and B, they're going to like retain all the stuff and, they're going to walk away just kind of like being better overall from this sort of stuff. But I mean, there's so many factors that go into this. I remember like talking to someone recently who was lamenting the fact, like, well, I told them in the talk about this thing and they keep coming back to me. It's like, yeah, the training transfer isn't there, man.
Right.
They didn't pay attention. They didn't pay attention to your PowerPoint.
Yeah, no one listens when you're speaking. I think it's like, I like the first point. I think kind of your reduce your expectations. I think a lot of people just miss the basics of like what employees actually want. So then the like these long, robust, structured programs don't like show the value because people don't feel like, they're getting paid equitably, or they like don't get the benefits of, work-life balance and things like that. So like, I think people need to figure out like, how do we better understand what our employees actually want and need versus trying to like push them all in this certain direction, regardless of their backgrounds or what they're coming from.
Your suggestion of needs analysis before they do training, you wild man?
Well, maybe. I think you need to figure out like where are you starting from before you're trying to go like, we need everyone to do X, Y, and Z, but like, what do they actually need and what do they want right now?
Well, Nelson, you're sounding dangerously close to advocating for some IO psychology wisdom. What are your thoughts on IO psychology?
I get it, but I also like don't get it sometimes. So I am an IO psych dropout. So I started the master's degree in IO. I found that it was not as practical as I wanted it to be, but I liked that it was helpful, but like big picture theory kind of stuff. But for me, and where I was in my career and at a specific role, it wasn't as like practical for what I wanted to do and what I was doing. So it was more so like, here's some best practices, but it wasn't like I needed a little bit kind of a different shift, I think, for what I was looking for. But I think seemingly people love it, y'all love it, everyone loves it. That's great. It wasn't like my cup of tea.
Well, I was thinking like maybe some shots fired there. I was like, not good.
I don't think it's like bad by any means. I think it's like helpful. but I don't think it's like the only route into, people analytics or things like that. I think, everyone's background is very kind of unique to theirs. Like my background is not, traditional from a IO psych HR perspective, but I think it's very kind of like practical. I've done a lot of analytics in a lot of different spaces, things like that. That's been helpful.
You could say you have the most traditional background for people analytics because you literally started in Moneyball. And like that was like why
Sure.
people analytics started.
Sure.
So-
On one hand, yeah, it's using those skills. If someone asks me, should I go into IO to work in people analytics? I think it's like a very what do you want to do in people analytics related kind of question, because if you want to do, very deep research, or you want to do, very specific assessments and things like that, I think, yeah, of course, that would be very helpful. Just a more of a higher level manager, or just oversee a people analytics department. I think those skills are a little bit different than what you get in the IO program. So I think it's very dependent on what you want to do. And I think it's also dependent on what the environment that you want to work in looks like from a kind of org level.
You also raise an interesting point about getting the master's degree and what you want out of it, and the kind of the stage of life as well. When people go into a master's program, it's probably several years after they finished from my experience, you either have people fresh out of undergrad or people several years out from undergrad, and at that point you're looking for just really practical skill sets to get ahead. Whereas, straight up from undergrad, it may be a little bit more still exploratory, right? A little pie in the sky.
Right. Yeah. So in my program that I was in, there was definitely a mix. I would say there was a decent amount of folks that majored in psychology undergrad and, hadn't done a lot with it quite yet, or they had just finished and they were just jumping directly into their next kind of degree. But then there were some folks that were kind of in the HR kind of people space. So it was a wide mix, I would say, on what they were focusing on. But I was actually the only one that was doing people analytics internally. There were some consultants and things like that, but not as many people doing what I was doing in-house already.
Well, now that you've expressed your immense hatred for IO psychology, which I appreciate you opening up about it, Nelson.
Sure. Yeah.
You did attend PsyOp last year, though, and we got to hang out there, which was fun. I think me, you, and Scott and Amy Stevenson, going around hanging out. What was that like?
Oh, it's really fun. Yeah. So if you want to get into IO to go to the conferences, I would say, yeah, big on that too. But no, it's fun. I think again, I like I'm not an IO hater per se, but I
sound like an IO hater.
I can also lean into that if we want to. I don't think there's there's no one degree that's just amazing for all of the stuff we're doing, because there's too much to it. But I think the conferences are really great. I think you learn a lot. I think the sessions are really interesting. Again, some of them are a little bit more theory versus applied. So I think you need to kind of go in with the mindset of what am I trying to do and what am I trying to get out of this stuff. But the social aspect is really fun. Everyone go to PsyOp.
Yeah. The Directionally Correct dinner was fire.
It was awesome. Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Let's move on to the next nerdy article. Which one do you want to go with, Scott?
Let's see. You're gonna like this one, Cole. You talk about this every so often. This is a meta-analysis of the criterion-related validity of pre-hire work experience. So for a lot of companies, they use a number of years of experience as a fundamental criteria when hiring folks. So this study conducted a meta-analysis of 81 independent studies, collected information on, job performance, training performance, and turnover, about 12,000 each of those samples. And overall, they found that a weak correlation across different outcomes from job performance 0.06, training performance 0.11, and turnover 0.00. Experience slightly more predictive when workers first start a new job. But overall, organizations should be cautious about using pre-hire experience as a primary selection tool.
The funny thing about this is how many organizations put so much stock into where people worked before and what they did before when they're hiring. And essentially, other than the very small correlation between early job performance, so starting a new job, right? There's not much there to work with, right? And there's no relationship to turnover. I will say this. I loved reading this, and I've said this before on the podcast. My favorite academic journal, Personnel Psychology, I saw it dropped in here. It's the best one. They always have the good articles. And one of the things I've started seeing in relationship to this is there's been this trend of like simplification of scientific results. So like if you read any one particular article, it's really hard to decipher if they found anything. And so then science came up with this solution. It's like, well, let's combine all the articles together. Let's call it a meta-analysis, right? And we'll combine all those articles together. And it's a little bit more easy to understand, but still it's pretty complex. And so then you had the folks come along like the Malcolm Gladwells, the Adam Grants. And so they start writing kind of like popular texts. And then we even covered it on the podcast. Like there's like these LinkedIn posts now that'll take an academic article and then simplify it for you. And then we go a step further on the podcast where we have the nerdery, where we just cover the bullet points of the article. And it's like, this is the whole trend of like extremely complex science to taking it to its most, simplest form. And it's like, I was thinking about that when I was reading this. I was like, okay, so you took an individual study about pre-hire work experience in its relationship, and then we meta-analyzed it, then we summarized it, and then we talked about it on a podcast. Well done, guys.
Just bring it on down to the people. Yeah, I think this was an interesting one. I do. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I actually agree with it essentially. Like, I think we spend so much time on like where they worked before, et cetera, et cetera. I think so. I guess this is a IO thing. I appreciate. I think like I appreciate the companies where it's like a more of a test or project based on what the job is going to look like. I think it's helpful for both sides. So you get like a little bit of, experience on like, here's what the job's going to look like, but they also get to assess you from that perspective. So that I think that seems like to be generally very helpful.
Yeah. The only other thing I would add, especially around turnover, is that it's a little bit confounded because people with more experience, they're going to have more options and they'll get upset just like anyone else too. So, they may be slightly more likely to leave, but yeah, overall, hey, like maybe they actually pay attention to the person, not what they did in the past. Like as Cole said in the past, like just because you have like 5 years of experience doesn't mean they're like 5 quality years.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think this is why you see so many companies, and again, we talked about it with Mark Efron, with Sandra Laughlin, is the move away from whether like trying to assume someone can do the job because of a credential or trying to assume someone could do the job because of their prior experience to can you do the job if you have the skills for the job, right?
Yeah.
And like I think that's why organizations are focusing so much on the decomposition of skills is just because like all the signals that previously used to be able to tell you in a pretty stable, non-dynamic, non-VUCA world that somebody was going to be good, they're all kind of like fading into oblivion in terms of their predictive capacity. And so like what's left? Well, it's like, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do this? And if you can do those things, then you can probably do the job, at least for the next 6 months until AI takes all our jobs.
Yeah.
Right.
Did y'all see that somehow a candidate was accidentally sent the qualifications for the job from the recruiter?
Yep.
Yeah, that was incredible.
Wow.
It's like they're only accepting SDEs, software development engineers from it's like 6 schools.
Like a specific list of schools. Like they also said like if you've worked at these specific companies, don't talk to them at all. It was pretty. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's like they're not our kind of people.
Yeah, it was all.
Do you think that stuff works? Do you think there's any validity there, or are they just being like needlessly judgmental?
I saw he was a L7, which is like a principal engineer at Facebook, I think, and he said you can't confirm it, but he said it looked right. Like he believed it was true. To take that for what it's worth, but
yeah, but does that mean it's like good, right? Like I'm sure others have similar structures, but it's probably like, a different question on like ethics and, is it good?
This is actually a people analytics question, right? No. Because I have seen, so many companies have the similar dream of, well, what if we could go in and analyze all the data that we had about, where people used to work, what are their degrees, where do they live, what are their commute times, and then put it all into one big model and see if it predicts job performance, right? Like I think a lot of people have actually envisioned that, but isn't this the logical conclusion of that? If it were actually true, because I've actually seen or I've been at organizations that tried to do this, And largely it's like there's not much signal there in the noise, generally speaking, unless you can get extremely specific or you have extremely high volume in terms of the roles. But like, but isn't this the logical conclusion of what you would expect to see if those kind of predictions were true?
Well, I would say that there's some big assumptions there that I would first want to call out. So I would say like your model is only as good as like the data you're putting into it, right? So like, are you like, if you look at the data from all these employees, right, historically, like, have you had, good representation? Have you had, fair representation? Because if your data and sample that you're putting into this model has always looked, similar from these schools, then yeah, that this is what it would look like. So I think it's probably more of a, taking a big step back on kind of like, what is let's look at the data first before we're just trying to kind of come up with this dream future state.
I think that's what they're trying to do in Westworld. They're trying to build like the supercomputer to predict everything about people's lives from all the data.
We all saw how that ended, right?
Westworld is such a wild.
Did we? Like somehow they like broke it open into like the third universe or something. I can't remember how it ended exactly.
I don't think there is an ending. I think they just lost the script.
I don't think I finished it either.
Yeah,
season 1 was fire. It was awesome.
It was crazy.
It was really good, and then everything after that was just garbage, just hot garbage, like hot Atlanta garbage.
Atlanta,
yes, Atlanta. There it is. Yeah.
All right. You want to hit one more nerdery real quick, Scott?
All right. Beyond the here and now, leveraging distal mental simulation for creative breakthroughs. Essentially, the article tests whether projecting yourself into the future can help your mind become more creative. So they got 2 studies comprised of 200 and 400 people each, roughly. And essentially, they showed that distal mental simulations can enhance your ability to come up with creative ideas. Anything else here very quickly? It's particularly been combined with complex abstract thinking, etc. But essentially just letting your mind run free. Go figure. Come up with more creative ideas.
I think that's the theme of today's podcast is just let your mind run free. Nothing bad can happen.
I mean, this is how, like, if you read about like Einstein or Tesla, they were able to like run mental simulations in their brain. That like prefrontal, or not prefrontal, but the parietal cortex was enlarged in both of them.
Oh, weird. I never heard that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that specifically. But yeah, I think there's something there. I think there's something there in the sense of like, I've read a lot of, books around like intentionality and like manifestation type of thing. So I think there's something to like trying to, I know like structurally trying to create, creativity from structure. I think is really interesting, like routines and things like that. And I think it was someone that like one of the, the famous philosophers of our time really tried to get very close to falling asleep, but like had like something
put marbles in his hands. Yeah.
Like, and it would like drop and it would like bring him back,
wake him up. Yeah.
But it's like, I think there's something to some type of like structure to get to this like unlock of creativity that is really interesting.
Oh. See, I thought for a second there you were going full vision board, The Secret, manifesting things.
I think that makes sense too. Like I think
there's something.
It's helpful.
There's something to that, to collect all your thoughts and kind of like put them all in one place and like try and connect the dots. There.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. I think you have to be your biggest fan and you have to kind of figure out like what does the future of what I want to do look like, and from a creative standpoint. So I love it.
It's funny you say that, Nelson. The other night I had this like dream. I'm working on a project and like there's like a we'll say an obstacle, and had this dream of how to get through the obstacle, and involved like creating this website that all these employees could go to. And like in the dream, I was like, oh, I fucking solved it, man. I solved it. Yeah. And I woke up the next morning, I was like, they could just like write it down. Like we don't need to build like this massive website.
Yeah. That's really funny. I have a good friend of mine does a lot of writing, and she always tells me you can write when you're drunk, but you need to edit sober. So you need to kind of like have, the creative juices going, but then you have to like take some time to kind of look at like, does this actually make sense? Is this practical? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. So that's what that sounds like.
Write, sober, edit, drunk. That would be interesting.
No.
Yeah.
All right.
Fun.
Well,
Be entertaining.
yeah. Well, Nelson, we are your biggest fans in addition to you being your biggest fan. Thank you. This has been a really fun episode. Scott, any final words for Nelson before we wrap up?
No, it's so good to see you. I know you're an IO
Likewise.
hater. No, I kid. It's so good to see you, man.
Yeah, likewise. I appreciate it, guys. It's been fun.
Awesome. Well, you've been listening to Directionally Correct, a People Analytics podcast with Cole and Scott, and today's guest, Nelson Spencer. Thanks for joining us, Nelson.